Right. All right, good evening and welcome to the City of Sunbury Council meeting. It is November 16th, 2022 at 7:30 p.m. Would you please join me for a moment of silent prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance? Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor St. John,
Here.
Mr. Capel,
Here.
Mr. Ghost,
Here.
Mr. Neff,
Here.
Mr. Grumney,
Here.
Mr. Martin,
Here.
Mrs. Cooper, here, all present.
All right, we do have a public hearing this evening. It's regarding the Sunbury New Community Authority petition. Is that right? All right, and I think we're going to kick it to Law Director Breen.
Okay, this is a public hearing. It is a quasi judicial matter. Anybody here who plans to testify will need to stand and raise their right hand to be sworn by the court reporter. Whether you intend to testify or not, if you're here and interested, it's good to be sworn. It does not mean you're required to testify, but if you're not sworn and later you decide to, we will have to stop and swear you in. So everybody who thinks they could or might, please stand and raise their right hand, please.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll present will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
All right. Who's going to enter the exhibits? This is
Mr. Breen, with your concurrence, I'll enter 3 exhibits. Exhibit A is the public hearing notice that was posted. Exhibit B is the public hearing notice that was on the Sunbury website. Those are both one-page documents. And then Exhibit C is a 3-page document, and it was provided by a resident who asked that it be entered into the record by Mr. Paul Holler. Those are the 3 exhibits that I have.
We'll have those entered into the record as exhibits. And at this time, we are ready to take any public testimony on the Sunbury Meadows New Community Authority petition to add the mentioned property.
and just to clarify for everyone, I saw a lot of folks stand up. This is for the New Community Authority. This is not necessarily directly tied to the communities at Sunbury Commerce Park. Okay. Would anyone like to speak? Okay. No public speakers? Okay. I was waiting. That was a good 15-minute second hold there.
I'm Paul Holler. I live at 575 Ridgebank Drive. I support the creation of this NCA. It's an appropriate application of this type of entity. My comments address trying to make NCAs more transparent to the public, to include this NCA and any other NCAs that may be created in the future. Since that index is or appendix, does this help? Can you display that one? Page.
You want it displayed?
Or everybody has one.
The council does have that,
That's
Mr. Holler. Okay.
I would like when we get to the third one, the one with the yellow on it, but not now. Thank you. This the one that looks like this, same thing you saw a month ago. The good news is I'm not going to read it. I just wanted to get it into the record, and of course so that you would have it for review. But, you know, the top of this list, the top of that sheet lists types of information that is currently hard to find for the public. Individual citizens would devote multiple hours over multiple days and may or may not be successful to find that type of information. At the bottom is my recommendation that would, in my opinion, significantly improve NCA transparency. It involves the council to require any NCA to report this type of information to the administrator, and then the administrator would get it posted on the city's webpage. There's nothing in this list that costs any money, with the exception of a map that is easy to read. That is likely to cost a little bit of money for the NCA. All the rest of the items is stuff that they do in order to carry out their business. I would like this list. Maybe you can display that one. This is a list of the NCAs in calendar year 2020 that were in Delaware County, and most of them were approved by the Board of Commissioners. Pick any one of these. There's nine of them. What's the millage rate and the payment duration for these charges for one of these? What does the money pay for? What does the actual area look like, the district? How well are they doing financially? If you implement my recommendations, answers to the questions like that would be available for the NCAs that you create. It makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, please display the one that has the yellow. This is the bylaws of one of the NCAs in this list. Those bylaws were created in 2006 and they remained in existence until 2020. I'm going to read it to you. This is the bylaws of one of the boards of an NCA that's not too far from here. Addressing the meeting. Persons wishing to address the board must make advance written requests for time to present oral communications to the board. This written request must be placed in the hands of the chairperson or any trustee for presentation to the board at least 2 hours before the meeting of the board. The request also must specify the subject matter and the amount of time requested. Transparency. Are you kidding me? How transparent was this board? That particular board was made up of 7 members, 3 from the developer, 3 elected citizens, and 1 assigned by the commissioners themselves. That's pretty much or very close to what you're proposing for the Sunbury Meadows NCA. How in the world did that type of a rule get passed? The 349 revised code requires the board to create their own rules. This is what they did. That board, as well as any many of these other boards, would even guess all of them, relies on the secretary for legal advice and direction, much like the council relies on the director of law. And the board also often acts as recommended. The years of experience working with multiple NCAs does not necessarily mean that the secretary offers the best recommendation. I'm going to say that again. Years of experience and working with multiple NCAs does not necessarily mean that the secretary that is selected offers the best recommendations. One example, their rule that we just read in order to talk before that particular board. The board has significant power and control over the NCA, and they may not always act as you would hope. I urge you to require I didn't read this before, apparently. Sorry. I urge you to require the council creating the NCAs to routinely provide the suggested report to the state administrator and then post them on the website. Now is the time to act. You're about to create one. There may be more. You can make life easier for anyone interested if you would require them to report items of information to the administrator to be posted on the web. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? I wanted to restate the name of this new community authority. It's listed in our agenda as the Sunbury New Community Authority petition, whereas it should be, I believe, Sunbury New Community Authority petition. That said, if there's no more public comment, I believe we're ready to close the public hearing. All right. Make a motion to close the public hearing. Second by Mr. Grumney. Discussion. Roll call.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Ghost,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper. Yes. Days.
All right, thank you. We had a meeting on November 2nd. The minutes are ready for approval.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mrs. Cooper. Second by Mr. Neff. Discussion. Roll call.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Ghost,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper. Yes.
Right. We are on to the visitors section of the meeting. We do have one planned visitor, Jennifer Knoll from the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. And I'd like to come up. Thank you for being here, Mrs. Knoll.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council, for the opportunity to be with you this evening. I'm Jennifer Knoll, I'm the Associate Director for Community Development with the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. And I understand you have a copy of the presentation that I'll be discussing this evening. And I'll be kind of looking to it as well to see where we're at. So thank you for bringing that up. Terrific, thank you.
Can we turn the volume up a little bit? I don't know that.
So we'll move on to the next slide, please.
Are you seeing green lights on the microphone?
It's a red light.
Oh,
That's the reason.
that's the reason. It's the batteries have died.
I just turned it off and turned it back on. Is that making a difference?
Let's try.
I'll try to speak into the mic. a
Got some
little.
battery. Thank you.
Thank you. And at any time, if you can't hear me, please just let me know.
Thank you.
But we'll move forward here. If we can move to the next slide. Thank you very much. So just a little bit about MORPC if you're not familiar with our organization. We are the Regional Council for Central Ohio. We have now 81 members across a 15 county area of service, which is what you see on the map here. And you can think of MORPC like a chamber of commerce, but instead of working with local businesses, we work with local governments across Central Ohio. And we work with our communities like Sunbury in a number of ways. First, we convene our members and our partners around the table to kind of work toward a shared goal and vision for the future of Central Ohio. We collaborate on important issues, and we also connect our members to resources, not only at the state level, but at the federal level as well. Advocacy is a big part of the work that we do at MORPC on behalf of our local government members. Next slide, please. So I can't have a conversation without talking first about how Central Ohio is a growing region. And so the information that you see here on this slide is information from the most recent census, the 2020 census. And what we learned is, I think, it kind of underscored the feelings that we were already having about this being a growing region. Among metro areas, Central Ohio ranked 27th in terms of growth. There are around 400 metro areas around the country, and we ranked 27th in terms of growth. Within the Midwest, Central Ohio and the city of Columbus did exceptionally well. Columbus was the only Midwestern city to grow by over 100,000 residents, and that ranked the city 9th overall in terms of population growth. So this is a strong rate of growth that we've been experiencing for many decades now across the region, but we probably feel it a little bit more strongly now, especially in light of some of the recent major announcements from Honda, Intel, and others. Next slide, please. So with that information, a big part of the work that we do at MORPC is project the future of our region's population and jobs and household growth as well. And so what we're showing here is that we remain on track to be a region of 3 million residents by 2050. Now, this information is prior to some of those major employment announcements that we've had recently. We're in the process right now of revisiting our population forecasts and understanding what the changes might be for our region in light of those. What we're really thinking is likely to be the case is this chart is not going to look too different. 3 million by 2050, maybe a little bit sooner. What we can expect to see is maybe in the short term, some peaks of faster growth than maybe we've experienced most recently. But the reality is that we really do account for things like employment announcements in our forecast, because this region has a lot of attractive features going for it. It does have a strong downtown and a strong regional connection with our suburban communities, our school districts, and the sort of economic development and corporate culture here really help to attract businesses and people to live as well. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I think is important to mention, though, is even as the region continues to grow, that growth is not going to be dispersed evenly across Central Ohio. In fact, what we're likely to see is a continuation of the trend that we've had for many years, which is growth tends to occur where growth already is. So in existing population centers. And so what you see here is a map of the region. The darker the shaded area, the faster the rate of growth is for those communities. And what you see as you kind of find Delaware County on the map is that Sunbury, Delaware, these are among our top 20% in terms of rate of growth. This is something you've been experiencing for a while, but it's likely to continue as well because it sort of compounds. You've been an attractive community for a while and you will continue to be. And even as Intel and those sort of associated businesses move in, we expect to see that a lot of the growth from anyone who may be moving to Central Ohio for those jobs is going to continue to occur in those dark red areas like Sunbury. Next slide, please. So we brought along a little bit of data just to kind of take a look at how Sunbury's rates of population and job growth compare to Delaware County and to the region as a whole. So the line represents the 7-county region of Franklin County and the 6 adjacent counties. The green bar represents Sunbury's rates of growth, and the blue bar represents the Delaware County's rates of growth, with population on the left and jobs on the right. And what you can see is that, certainly the county continues to experience some of the highest rates of growth of any of the counties in our region. And Sunbury is keeping pace with it in terms of population growth. Again, this is not new for our region. It's not new for your community, but it is a recognition that, there's a lot going for Sunbury, and there's a reason why folks want to be here to live and to work. What I do think is interesting to note is the job growth projections, the bar chart on the right. So population outpacing regional growth as a whole, right? But when we look at job growth, it's occurring at a slower rate, or it's expected to occur at a slower rate than the county and the region. And I think this could represent an economic development opportunity for Sunbury. As you're thinking about folks who are continuing to move into the community, can you capture those folks with employment opportunities here in Sunbury as well? Next slide, please. And so here what we did is we just pulled some comparisons across a couple of peer cities. Certainly this is not completely representative, and we're working to pull together something that would be much easier for us to take a look at how each city compares to any other city within our region. But what we're showing here is comparisons between Sunbury, Delaware, and Marysville. And here again, I think we see fairly similar patterns where Sunbury is really tracking pretty strongly in terms of population growth, maybe has some opportunities for job growth as well to support that growing population. And once again, all of these data are prior to the Intel announcement. We're still working to understand what the numbers might look like in the near term since that announcement. Next slide, please. So it's possible you've seen this map before. It's kind of been getting a lot of attention. Our folks, my colleagues in our mapping team put this map together earlier in the year. And what it does is it maps rush hour drive times to the Intel site in the Johnstown area. And so as you can see, the impact is pretty far reaching. Within 60 minutes drive during rush hour, so that's the outermost red band that you see, there are about 20 counties, that are within that 60-minute drive time. What this tells us is that this impacts a lot of folks, not only in Central Ohio, but across the state. And it's not just Intel, but we can expect that there's going to be a lot of supporting businesses that are also going to be looking at this map and thinking that this is probably a good location for them to be expanding their footprint as well. Next slide, please. But once again, that growth is not going to be evenly distributed across the region. And so there are some sort of laws of physics, if you will, that say that over time, people tend to naturally gravitate toward a commute of about 30 minutes or less. And it doesn't matter what sort of your mode of travel is, but in this case, if you're driving, it's a commute time of about 30 minutes or less. And so what you see here is that red 30-minute commute time around the Intel site. And so we can see communities like Sunbury that are within that drive time, or where we're expecting to see future growth probably really be focused, especially as it relates to those folks who might be working for Intel in any supported industries that would be located close by. And I think what's the big thing to take away here is that we're really fortunate to be attracting major employers like Intel, like Hyperion, to have Honda and Ohio State expanding their footprint. This is a great opportunity for our region and for our communities. But there is a real, I think, growing concern that we're not going to be able to continue to meet the needs of the residents of our communities unless we're really committed to making changes to accommodate our approaches to housing and development. Next slide, please. So with this slide, what I like to talk about here is just that even in light of sort of the inflation and the difficulties that we're seeing with rising interest rates, the housing market in Central Ohio remains pretty competitive and pretty pricey. We continue to see prices remain high, whether you rent or own your home. And what that does as a result is it has ripple effects. The more a household is spending on their housing costs, the less money they have available for equally important costs, whether that's transportation, education, food, healthcare. And this can be a real and growing problem for our communities. Next slide, please. Not only do they have real challenges for the households themselves, but this has an impact on our employers across the region too. So what we hear from a lot of our employers is that even though we have this fantastic local pool of talent to draw from, employers are telling us that they're increasingly having a difficult time attracting and retaining workers. And oftentimes one of the big things that they're citing as the concern is that there's not enough nearby attainable housing for their workers. So the farther a worker has to travel to get to that job, the more chances there are that something can interfere with their ability to get to work. And so it's really important for our communities as we're thinking about new population and new job opportunities that we're also thinking about where the workforce is going to live in relationship to those jobs, really thinking about housing and jobs hand in hand. Next slide, please. So this has been certainly a concern of our members for several years. And so in 2020, MORPC released a regional housing strategy for Central Ohio. This was a collaborative investment, but also project that involve not only our local governments, but members of the real estate development community, employers, development finance, nonprofits and service organizations, all coming together really with the goal to understand what the core issues are behind the challenges that we're experiencing here in Central Ohio. And as you can see there, the strategy is guided by a vision where growth and post-pandemic recovery help to realize more equity among Central Ohioans, not less. We believe that housing, where it's built or maintained, who it's for, and how it's priced, can be a platform to achieve this vision. Next slide, please. So at the root of the regional housing strategy are these 5 core housing issues. These are really what underlies a lot of the housing challenges that we're experiencing in Central Ohio, but it's worth pointing out that these are not unique to Central Ohio. Really, like so many other communities, our region is experiencing increased competition for homes. This is a simple matter of supply and demand. Barriers limiting access to homes. In other words, there is discrimination that takes place in the real estate market and in lending practices. A limited supply of homes priced for low-income households. Simply put, there is not enough naturally occurring affordable housing or subsidy to meet the need across our region. Demand for a more diverse housing stock. As our region continues to grow and our population continues to have more diverse needs, we need our housing stock to keep up with those needs. And then finally, housing instability. And we define housing instability by taking a look at the rates of eviction and cost burden that exist across Central Ohio. Next slide, please. This is actually a slide that I borrow from the BIA. And I like this slide because I think the content is really simple, but it's a good reminder that a community with a healthy housing market provides options for residents at all stages of our lives, regardless of our age and our abilities and our work status. There's a home for us in a community. And so a healthy housing market really does have all of these components. Not only is that good for the housing market, but that's good for our communities too. I like to think of it like a diversified investment portfolio. If you think about how you're investing, you spread the risk by investing in more than one thing. And our housing market really kind of functions in a similar way. Next slide, please. So probably the most important piece of the regional housing strategy, certainly there's a lot of data there, and I invite you to take a look through it. But this implementer's toolkit is where I really wanted to focus a little bit with you this evening. This is the opportunity that all of our communities have to understand how they can explore options for addressing affordability and supply based on the types of housing submarkets that you have in your community. We know that needs and opportunities look very different across our dynamic region. And so it was important to us as we were building this toolkit that the actions within here could be contextualized to the different markets that exist. We identified 12 housing submarkets across Central Ohio. And so our menu of actions, you can see there's 111 of them, can all be filtered down by the housing submarkets that we have in our communities to pick the actions that really make the most sense to start or scale within, for example, Sunbury. If we go to the next slide, please, we can show that a little bit. So as we filter through by community, this is how many actions would be relevant for Sunbury. You can see there's still quite a few of them. I realize 78 is still a lot to work with, but it gives you an idea of the housing submarkets that exist, like what the market is like here in the community based on demographic and market data. And gives you an idea of where you might want to start to have the conversation with your community in terms of addressing supply and affordability. And there's other ways to filter through this toolkit as well. So in addition to filtering by community, you can also filter by core housing issue or by action type. And there really is something for all of us to be involved. And so, for example, as elected officials, there's a number of policy related, both land use and non-land use policy related actions that may be of interest to this group to explore and see if any of them would make sense to consider for Sunbury. Next slide, please. So you'll hear me say often that our communities need more housing and our residents need more housing options. And that's true, but it's actually true for more than just housing. It's certainly from our perspective at MORPC, we encourage our members to think about not only options for housing, but options for transportation as well. More options meet more needs and really also help to address affordability head on, which is a big challenge facing many of our communities. Communities that are able to offer choices for housing and transportation are simply better able to meet more of their residents' needs. And these same communities become more resilient as these needs and preferences inevitably change in the future. Next slide, please. So I wanted to acknowledge and thank the city of Sunbury. We've had the opportunity to work with the community on a couple of important transportation related projects lately. Our technical assistance team worked with the community to take a look at the alignment of the city's trail network and path network, looking for opportunities to create safer and more efficient connections to schools, to amenities, to jobs. And the other project that we recently completed with your support was a regional trail town framework. Trail towns are communities that are able to leverage their relationship with the trails that run through them to enhance economic development and quality of life opportunities. And this framework was a big step forward toward being able to launch a regional initiative. And I love this word cloud. This is taken from the Trail Town framework effort. This was the result of a community survey that we did during the development of that framework. And what I see when I look at this word cloud is a community of people who love Sunbury. This is telling us what they love about it. And this is exactly the kind of thing that I think is really at the core of the work that you're all doing every day. And certainly when we're talking about housing, talking about why we live in the communities that we do. And so often it comes down to the things that we love about our community, the character of our community, the amenities, the things that make this a place we want to call home. So just wanted to acknowledge and thank you for that. And then I think this next slide will be the last slide. Yeah. So again, just reinforcing that idea that for so many of us, we choose to call home because there's something about the character of that community that we really love. And so it really is, it's an important and not an easy job for you as officials to kind of help to preserve the character of your community, even as it's continuing to grow. And I think that the question that we hear so often is, how do we strike that balance of preserving the old, even as we embrace the opportunities that come with new households, new jobs? And we're seeing a lot of examples across Central Ohio where communities are strengthening their downtowns. This seems to be an opportunity, I think, for a lot of communities, adding new opportunities for restaurants, for retail, all within that sort of Main Street area of the community. It's a proactive approach. It allows for strategic investment. And it also helps to keep existing neighborhoods the same and untouched. And I think that's really important for many communities, as they want the feel of their residential neighborhoods, but it would make sense to invest in those Main Street areas. So, I think the takeaway message here is that as you're thinking about how best to address housing supply and affordability in Sunbury, know that there's resources within the regional housing strategy, but know that MORPC is also here as a resource for you. This continues to be a priority area for our members. And so we're going to be putting even more resources into this in the coming year. We're going to be putting more resources into technical assistance, workshops, and other tools that we'll have available for you to support you in this work. So I thank you for the time to listen to the presentation. If there are any questions and we have the time, I'm happy to take those.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Are there any questions from City Council?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you for coming up here and sharing this. I'm really intrigued by this one right here.
Yeah.
So is this kind of, this survey that came out, did it come out and what was big was what was most important, or how did you come up with these graphics?
Yeah. So that's the fun with the word cloud, is that the more times a response is received, the bigger we can make the word. So that does emphasize how many respondents identified that particular amenity.
And is there like I don't know, maybe a chart or something that we could see the respondents? And
Yeah,
okay.
We have that in our Trail Town framework. I'll make sure to get that to you.
Oh, thank you. And then you also said there's other examples throughout the area of like the old meeting new kind of thing. What are, if you can say that, what are some of the areas that come to mind? Because examples to kind of put it into.
Yeah, well, I think a lot about like Westerville and Delaware, communities that have invested a lot in their Main Street areas in recent years. And there are areas where as residents, we tend to congregate anyway, right? It's where, the Fourth Friday event takes place, but that kind of thing. So it makes sense. There's already there. And our residents are telling us by being there that they want to see more investment in those places. So I think a lot of that, and I think it's important to notice too, Sunbury has some really wonderful, unique amenities, like having this town square in this area is like distinctly Sunbury. When you're here, there are communities across the region that don't have that work really hard to replicate it. And that's hard to do. And so it's an opportunity that you all have that makes this community special. And you can really kind of build upon that and embrace it.
Oh, thank you.
Jennifer, do these population projections include the impacts of Intel?
in these first few slides here.
They do not. No, we hope to have those numbers by the end of the year.
Be looking forward to those.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
I'm sure they're going to change significantly.
Are there other questions or comments? Mr. Grumman?
Thank you.
Mr. Martin? Thanks. Mr. Cooper?
Interesting, very interesting.
Mr. Capel? No. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Thanks for coming in tonight.
Oh, my pleasure.
Truly appreciate it. It's been long overdue to have you up.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Take
Have a
care.
nice evening.
We're still on the visitors section. We don't have any other scheduled visitors. Are there any other visitors that would like to speak? All right. We're on to committee reports. Mr. Neff,
Nothing to report.
Mr. Martin,
Go.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yep. Last Wednesday, we had an events committee and we are really kind of getting the ball rolling here. We've been working on some things for the last few months. So we finalized a special event permit and we also staff, it sort of on the same line of as that, staff brought some suggested parade protocols for the future. Ms. Swain forwarded those to our police department and we're going to be talking with them and getting their suggestions, and we look forward to working on that. We also directed staff to initiate a process for electric quotes to get our current equipment on the square up to date. Something that we're going to be starting in 2023, and I may have mentioned this before in my committee report, is we're going to be starting a citizens recognition program. It's going to be done quarterly. Folks can nominate. They'll go, the nomination will be it'll be on our website, and then all the nominations will go to staff. Staff will collect them all, bring them to the events committee. The events committee will go into executive session, discuss, and then when the winner is announced, they'll be invited to our council meetings and with a photo op with the mayor. And we're really looking forward to that. Something new. And we discussed, just a reminder, that Christmas on the Square is coming up. Well, I guess we may or may not meet before then, but December 3rd.
I love the idea, the quarterly nomination. Thanks, Mr. Neff. I think that's your brainchild. And
Listening to the public.
Some of the public. Yes, yes, they asked for it.
your voice for the people. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Anything else, Mrs.
Yep.
Cooper?
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Capel?
Nothing here.
All right. Mr. Grumney? Mr. Ghost?
Yes, so we had earlier this evening, prior to this meeting, our regular monthly finance meeting, and you all were present. So for the record, we talked about the facilities planning project. Mr. Hennessy had a report on that. Proposed budget revisions for 2023, and Mr. Piles had the crack ceiling equipment proposal for next year. And prior to that, we had our insurance committee benefits meeting, talking about our annual benefits. Mr. Hennessy had a proposal there, and the representative from Rankin and Rankin, Tony, gave us a nice presentation, a spreadsheet on different options. He priced out and bid everything out. And he's recommending a change this year to Med Mutual and an HSA plan. It's a traditional non-MEWA plan. It does have a refund opportunity based on claims performance. And we're going to talk further about that at the end of the meeting in unfinished business. Mr. Hennessy, did you have anything further to add to that? Okay, we'll wait till later. But it's offering a significant amount of savings to the village, and it's a non-MEWA. You know, we used to have problems with that in terms of going to that in the past because of the savings, but we're going to get the savings. We're going to capture it without having to go to it. And the police force is on board, and staff is as well. So talk further.
Yes, sir.
That's
Thank
it.
you very much. All right. All right, we're on to the police report. There was a police report submitted. Did you want me to just go through a couple things quickly, Chief?
If there's something you want to hit on.
How about, I'll just hit on a couple things. Cruisers still back ordered pretty much, right?
Yes.
I want to give credit to the full police department because it's been a total team effort. We've done an extraordinary amount of training over the past month and a half, a lot of shift covering, extra special duty shifts, and thanks so much for coordinating that leadership team. And also thanks to the officers for taking training seriously. I want to give a quick update on collective bargaining. We have the final draft in our attorney's hands. That's our outside counsel, and look to put it into final form. We're hoping that the FOP will approve the contract as is sometime in the next 15 days. So we can pass that first thing in December. And that's all we have for the police report. Well, also, I think this is important to say. We were invited, along with the Delaware County Sheriff's Office, myself, Chief and Deputy Chief, to meet with the school board to review a policy that's under review right now. Now, we met in executive session, so I can't give the specifics as to what was discussed in there, but I can tell you that we went in with the intent, and I think came out with the feeling that our message was clear to the school board, and I know they're still reviewing the policy. Okay, we're on to the administrator's report.
Thanks, Mayor. My report was provided in OneDrive a day or two ago. I'll certainly answer any questions that it might prompt. I did want to note we had a couple email compliments that I included related to the service department, their tireless work on leaves and some other drainage issue that they tackled. And then my two big tackles I'm working on right now is our dam report and demo of those two buildings that we want to get done through a grant. And you'll see some legislation later this evening and I think a motion on moving those forward. So.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Steve?
Got one more compliment from, there was a resident who was complaining on right off in front of McDonald's, like the car kind of went off the road because the shoulder wasn't high enough, but brought to my attention, talked to Steve and Brad, and they were on it within a few days. So he definitely was very thankful for you being so responsive to him.
That area is a continuous battle to keep the gravel where it's supposed to be.
Right. Well, you did great. He was very happy. So thank you.
Make a note, maybe during our street program, we can add another a foot of pavement in that area to help folks, but thank you.
I felt like this one recognition was important enough to actually read. I told Brad I was going to do this. So we got an email. I received an email just to me on Thursday afternoon from Ralph Hoover. And first I want to thank Mr. Hoover for sending this, but this is a feel good moment and it's towards the end of the year. So please open your hearts. Mayor, just a short notice of praise for the gentleman operating the leaf pickup system truck. Their job is not as simple as you probably know, driving super slow in between mailboxes, signs and poles and signage, lifting that suck tube up out around this stuff like a computer game controller, still meeting schedules that weren't designed for leaves, deciding when they fall or rain or winds. Still, they do the walkabout with the controller in hand, avoid oncoming hurried drivers, bicyclists, trash collection stuff. I'm personally highly impressed and amazed that they still come and do their job in a timely manner. I'm 77. I have a third of an acre property at 252 Greenbrier, where I and my wife of 54 years have resided for 45 years. These guys have amazed me in the fact of how precise and complete they do their job. I'm not always accurate in dumping my leaf, pick up, pull behind, and medical problems disallow me to physically walk around and easily or on uneven ground. They compensate for me. I know this can't be a continual procedure, but it is greatly appreciated. I just thought you would like to know, as most of what you get is from a few complainers. Please let me know their extra effort is one beautiful reason why small town America is not a dirty word. Thank you. I thought that was pretty cool. Thank you. All right, we are on to the engineer's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few updates. Everything was updated in our report of Fallen Heroes Phase 3 Trail is out for bid. The bids will open this Friday, the 18th. We currently have 6 plan holders on that project, so we're expecting to receive some good bids. We are starting on the Reservoir Park design to prepare bid documents based on the last Parks Committee meeting, so we're working on that. And wanted to add an addition to the report, we are in the process of performing a traffic calming study on Sunbury Meadows Drive from Granville Street to State Route 3. We'll be looking at existing conditions, speed, volume, and potential traffic calming treatments along that section. So we are working on that. All the private development projects are updated in the report, and I will take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Hall? Thank you, Wes. All right, we're on to resolutions, which we have none. We're on to ordinances, third reading. We have a second reading ordinance number 2022.44. An ordinance approving the application of Romanelli Sunbury Group LLC and NPA Commercial Property LLC to rezone approximately 13.22 plus or minus acres of property along the south side of West Granville Street, bifurcated by Sunbury Meadows Drive, from planned industrial district to planned commercial district pursuant to the city of Sunbury zoning code. I wanted to first start with Mr. Hall and then kick it over to the applicant if they have anything to add. But there's been a lot of things that have happened over the past couple of weeks in terms of discussions back and forth with the developer. We may be trying to pull up an exhibit, but I think Wes is probably the best one to get framed up. And I also want to apologize to Wes. Typically, we give the engineer a lot more time to review their 50-page comment document put together, but we were pushing a 4 or 5 hour meeting last week or 2 weeks ago. So. This one.
Is it that one? Okay.
So I was going to go over a few of the pending items that we are working with the applicant on, and what's up on the screen will be I just cut and pasted the email exchange into a Word document. So just starting off with the sub area B architecture. They're in item 1. We're just cleaning up the text there, basically in that first bullet point, which is the red item. So nothing substantial there. As far as the architecture in general, there's some items below here that we'll talk about next as far as the percentage requirements for brick, stone, natural materials. So we'll get to that in a minute. Item 2 was essentially just a temporary construction easement needed. And Amber, if you scroll down, keep going. Right here on the east side of this development, it will directly abut phase 3 of the Fallen Heroes Trail. So we need to just secure a 10-foot construction easement, not a permanent easement, obviously. There's a 15-foot setback from the property line to the edge of the parking. So this would essentially be just a grading. We need to go over the property line 3 to 5 feet just to adjust grade there for where the trail is going to sit. Item 3 is related to traffic. So made a couple statements here essentially. First one being that we recognize the applicant has provided the right of way for Sunbury Meadows Drive. And he's funded half of the construction amount for Sunbury Meadows Drive from where it ended at the north end of the Sunbury Meadows subdivision to Granville Street, which this was really a critical connection. So we recognize that contribution that Mr. Romanelli made. the second statement is we also recognize that this development will pay the required roadway facility development impact fees per unit, which will be a substantial amount as well. We had our traffic team take a look at the traffic in the area at the intersection of Granville Street and Sunbury Meadows Drive. With this at full build out, a traffic signal is not warranted at this location based on our analysis. So we took a look at that over the last couple of weeks. And a signal is not warranted. It takes quite a bit of traffic to warrant a signal, so it's not quite warranted at this time. That doesn't mean that this development does increase the traffic at the intersection, but due to the first two statements, we feel the applicant has contributed a substantial amount, which would cover the cost of that traffic signal for their contribution. A fourth bullet point under traffic is we want to, and it's not finalized yet, but we want to look at potentially creating some on-street parking from where the commercial drive is on this development to the southern portion of the development. So that stretch along where the apartments are, we're going to look at, and that could potentially be part of that traffic calming treatment on Sunbury Meadows Drive. So we're going to carry that through potentially to where the commercial access drive is. Screening on the south boundary. Took a look at a couple things here. There we prepared a couple exhibits. If you scroll down, Amber, there's the first exhibit just shows the distance between the patio homes on Common Bent to where the building line would be for the apartments. It's about 105 feet. So what we did right now in the landscape plan calls out for a 3-foot mound with a 6-foot fence, and we wanted to just project what that line of sight would be for somebody 6 feet tall standing on a rear of the patio homes looking towards the apartment buildings, and you can see that hits right about the rail of the second balcony. So what we're going to recommend is to raise that to an 8-foot, and if you go down to that second exhibit, it shows what that line of sight would be. So that goes up to the top of the balcony or about the eave height of the building, right on the edge of the roof line. So with the 3-foot mound and an 8-foot fence, plus the additional landscaping, which will go in, should provide a visual screening from that balcony down to the patio homes. Item 5 is the clubhouse, and item 5 and 6 are essentially just talking about the building materials for the clubhouse and the apartment buildings. There's been a bit of an exchange here recently on this. What the original email stated on the clubhouse, which is I think the applicant and the city are agreeing on, is will be 75% of the building facades for the clubhouse will be brick, with the remaining 25% being a fiber cement product like a hardy board or a hardy plank. I'll pause there if there's any comment on that or additional. Okay. Moving on to the apartment buildings / other buildings, which would include all other structures within the development. The initial exchange was a 50% brick and a 50% fiber board or a fiber cement siding. There was some additional exchange, and my understanding is just inserted a piece of an email here on my notes. All other buildings will be 50%. Street facing elevations will be 50% brick. Any elevation not in direct sight line facing the woods, for example, could be 100% hardy plank or other similar type products. So that's still in flux a little bit. We need to fine tune that, but that was the flavor of the recent exchange on that. Sure.
Couple questions, Wes.
And then just one more item on there. There was a trash compactor comment from a council person, so. Right now, the way the main trash compactor unit is set up, it's in the southeast corner of the development. So we're requesting, and if you know the development, it's split by Sunbury Meadows Drive. If there's if there can be an accommodation for the apartments on the west side to have either a trash dumpster area or a smaller compactor unit, is that comment. Mr. Ghost.
Yeah, thank you. So back to the traffic calming comments. I think that and the traffic safety are one of the big issues with the project itself. But you talked about signalizing the intersection at some point, not now, but what is the cost in general, do you think, to signalize the intersection?
We'd have to look at that. You're probably, it depends if we're gonna go with mast arms or span wire as far as the signals, so could be 150 to 300,000 range would be a rough estimate.
Okay, and then with regard to calming, you mentioned the parking. What about bump outs or chicanes, something like that, or flashing crosswalks? Are those things that you're looking at?
The bump outs would be to facilitate the on-street parking along Sunbury Meadows Drive that would front the apartment area south of the commercial drive. So south of the commercial drive to the southern border of the property is what is fronts the apartment areas. So that's where we'd be looking at the bump outs for on-street parking potential.
And they would include landscaping
And a curb bump out.
Okay. And what about back to the screening? You had a 3-foot mound and an 8-foot fence.
Correct.
What would be the difference, or why not a 5 or 6 foot mound and a 4-foot fence?
Right now with a 3-foot mound and get into some math, so the 3-to-1 side slopes would create a 21-foot wide mound if it was 3 feet high, 3-foot top, 3-to-1 sides. There's a 25-foot setback on that south line from the edge of the asphalt parking to the property line. So if we raise that mound to 4 or 5 feet, then with a 3-to-1 slope, it's going to go over that 25-foot grass strip essentially available for that parking setback. So we're trying to keep that mound within that setback area. There's also a utility easement and a water line proposed, which will have to be looked at as part of the final design. But there's a lot going on in there. It's about as high as we felt that mound. Now, if it during final design, if that can be tweaked slightly, we'll look at that. But that's the answer on that.
Okay, so in short, that mound and fence setup satisfies the setback configuration.
Correct.
That'll work best.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Wes, at what phase does engineering, if this were to pass, what phase does engineering really dive into water detention, retention, runoff, prevention, a bunch of engines?
On this particular development, there's a detention basin that exists already. So that services this development, but that's that next step. Really, as it moves past rezoning for this type of development, it'll go right into final design. I would imagine would be the applicant's intention is to move to final design.
And the way that works is that the applicant, the developer, is providing plans that are being reviewed by you and your team.
Correct.
Okay. Stormwater specialists.
Everything, yeah. Every aspect of the development, all of the drainage will be reviewed. Everything associated with the development.
Gary, Mr. Fisher, or Mr. Owen, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, let me start. This is David Fisher. First of all, thanks for allowing me to attend by Zoom tonight. Mayor and members of council, appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit with you tonight about this. Just kind of point by point going over Mr. Hall's memo that we've been working on over the past couple of weeks. We agree with the sub-area B architecture in his point 1. We agree to the temporary construction easement for the trail extension, which is fine. We appreciate the accommodation on traffic. We would point out with respect to his point number 3, that the suggestion of the bump out and parking along Sunbury Meadows Drive, we're not adverse to that, but we would point out to council that that was a very contentious issue at the Planning and Zoning Commission when this came before them for review and approval, particularly with respect to Mr. Gokenauer, as I recall. There was a strong feeling that they did not want any on-street parking in front of the apartments on Sunbury Meadows Drive. Now, granted, that was a number of months ago, and we certainly understand Mr. Hall's suggestion, and we agree with it, that on-street parking does reduce drive aisles and does have a traffic calming effect. So we're not adverse to doing that. We simply want to point out for council's consideration that that was a very, very, very big issue at Planning and Zoning Commission early on in the application process for this development. With respect to screening, I know that Mr. Smith provided an alternative drawing to Mr. Piles earlier today, and perhaps we could put that up on the screen. If you recall, there was one neighbor to the south who was particularly affected by the proposed mounting and screening given the location of his property. And so what we've done is we've looked at the plan and we've adjusted that building somewhat to move it back to 60 feet versus 50 feet. And I'd ask that if Mr. Smith could jump in here and explain what we've done and its impact so that we can discuss together with you whether there is really a need to increase the height of the fencing. Mr. Smith, could you take that on for us, please?
I can, as long as I can figure out how to turn this thing on.
The batteries may have died on it by now.
Yeah.
You're good. Okay. Garrett Smith, you need my address? 720 East Broadway, Columbus, Ohio. Just real quick, Steve, if you could roll down a couple of slides here. Keep going. Okay, so everybody remembers this is kind of where we were at the beginning. And then this was our original application. Next slide. So this is where we were currently. And one of the things that we heard at the last meeting, I think this was a comment that Larry made, and he had some concerns that I don't know if this was discussed before at all, but I actually got an opportunity to meet with Larry last winter and a couple of other neighbors. It was actually a really great meeting. Very gracious folks, opened their home to me, even sent me home with a plate of brownies. That meeting was really kind of what resulted in the plan that we have here in front of us, moving those buildings back, reducing some of the units, moving the parking back, increasing the mounting, adding the fence, adding the landscaping on both sides of the fence. Those were really the improvements that came out of that meeting. And after that meeting, I had some discussion with Vince and Jim, and they all felt that was the right thing to do. Now, I understand Larry still got some concerns, and that's okay. We wanted to just get as far as we possibly could with that. One of the things that Larry did mention, and I'll point it out on both sides just for everybody, this building right here, this 2-unit building, the 2-story above the garage, his house sits right here. So this, I think, Larry, this was the building you were concerned about. Okay.
Well, one to the right too, because I mean.
Right. Okay, understood. Then but the big concern was the forward facing windows and the bedroom windows out this side. So if you roll out to the next one, what we did was we moved that building. So you can kind of see here, instead of having the building face in this direction, we moved the building back off the pavement. And so now, instead of the 50-foot setback, this building's really been moved in line with everything else. And it now faces in this direction. And so he won't have a bunch of people staring out of this building kind of into his backyard.
So, Mr. Smith, this is a revision that's taken place just in the last couple of
Yeah,
weeks.
I apologize. This wasn't discussed with Wes, and it wasn't discussed with anybody else. It was just that, hey, we heard this concern. This is an easy one for us to address. We're gonna go ahead and commit to making this change. And so this is really kind of a last minute thing. So I apologize for not really being able to get it to anybody ahead of time. But it was just something that we felt that we could do to at least address, that issue. And then on the issue of the mound, we studied that a little bit further. And within that setback area, we actually have enough room for a 4-foot mound. And so we can go up to a 4-foot mound and still meet the typical maximum slope of 3 to 1. And then get the fence on top of that mound. So we're willing to work with the city. We're a little concerned about an 8-foot mound or an 8-foot fence on top of a 4-foot mound. It's gonna look a little bit like Trump's wall at the border, but we're willing to continue with those conversations.
So, understand you correctly, just that certain section will be 4-foot mounted, or the whole mound redone at 4 feet?
We have enough room along the entire front. I mean, we have kind of the entry feature right here. We can start the mound, right in here and continue a 4-foot mound all the way down the line.
Well, in that case, I think still the 8-foot fence would be my preference personally. As long as the residents would feel the same way, I think. 12 total feet plus
Right.
the landscape.
I don't think we're absolutely opposed to it. We think it'll look a little opposing, but if that's what everybody wants, then, we'll figure out a way to make it happen. I mean, an additional 2 feet on top of the fences. I don't know that we'll be able to do a vinyl fence, which is less maintenance intensive, but you can design a wood fence, pretty much any height that you want. You want to withstand wind loads, so.
And once the landscaping grows some, the fence will be less obnoxious to look at.
And I think so, and that was really one of the things that came out of the meeting with the neighbors. The neighbors wanted to see landscaping on both
Right,
sides of that
yeah.
mound. And we agree with that. That's gonna help, ultimately soften the appearance of the fence.
And the trees you're using, I think you had mentioned in the plan, it's 2.5-inch calipers, which would be roughly 12 to 15 feet in height to start, correct?
Yeah.
Except for
We have
the
a
evergreens.
mixture in there of evergreens, regular shade trees, deciduous shade trees, and ornamental trees. What we really wanted to see in there was a variety, so that it's just not a straight wall of green. We wanted some fall color, some flower, some height for shade, all of those things. So we try to provide a variety across that mound. But again, we're open to that discussion. If, the neighbors came back and said, hey, we want more evergreens and less ornamentals because we don't care about the flowering or fall color or the different interests. I don't think we have an objection to that. I think we're going to work to try and find whatever the best answer is that's possible if the board decides to, move this forward.
Thanks, Gary. Moving on to the other points on Mr. Hall's memo. With respect to items 5 and 6, which is the exterior materials for the clubhouse and the apartment buildings. I've not had a chance to confirm that yet with Mr. Romanelli. I do know that Mr. Gose, Jim Olin here's with you tonight from Romanelli News, and Vince Romanelli had some calls on that. I think we're getting there. Jim, I don't know, is that your understanding that it's 25% brick, or excuse me, 75% brick on all elevations of the clubhouse and 50% on the street and other visible elevations of brick, and the remainder hardy plank? Is that your understanding of what was agreed to?
Sure. Jim Olin, 148 West Rock Road with Romanelli News. So in our conversations that we've had from the beginning, we're looking at our site in Westerville as our example. And so what those exact percentages are, we're still working through that, but we just wanted to ensure everybody is going to be the same type of natural materials with the hardy plank and the brick. As far as the exact percentages, we want to make sure that the exact percentages don't get caught up in our design and our architectural look. So if it's 48% and it looks, and everyone loves it, it's by putting 2 extra percentage of brick stone is not going to make a difference. But we are committed to the hardy plank. We're committed to the brick. It's just a matter of what percentages and where those locations are, and we're trying to finalize that for you.
Jim, is there an issue of brick versus stone on those elevations?
We've been just discussing brick with that. We're okay with either. If stone is the preferred material, we're fine with that. It's brick.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Fisher. In my personal opinion, I think because it's a gateway entry to the city and the square, that it needs to be consistent. I mean, if I'm going to approve it, it's going to have to be brick, in my opinion.
All right, that's fine. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. I'd heard stone knocked around, and I want to make sure we heard from you, Mr. Ghost, in terms of what your expectations were there. And then lastly, on the trash compactor, that's fine. We'll add a trash facility on the west side of the project. We get the issue of having to cross Sunbury Meadows Drive. So I think we're perilously close on all of the issues that Mr. Hall has raised. I guess as we move forward towards a November 30th third reading and hopefully passage on this ordinance, I'd like to know where council is on the issues of parking on Sunbury Meadows Drive. I discussed that earlier and told you that we had a lot of pushback at planning and zoning on that initially. I didn't know where we are on that. I'd like to confirm on the mounding and privacy fence, what council can live with. And it seems to me that we're there with Mr. Ghost on the brick architecture on the apartment buildings and the clubhouse. So I'd like to know if we can get some consensus and some comment from council tonight on those outstanding issues, which are parking on Sunbury Meadows Drive and the expectation on the mounding.
I'll talk really quickly about the parking on Sunbury Meadows Drive. I do recall there being a little bit of contention, but I remember, Mr. Breen, maybe you can confirm if I have this right or wrong. I believe you were in that meeting. The Planning and Zoning Commission was a little bit caught off guard because we hadn't seen a plan with parking on the street, and then we saw the plan with parking on the street, and I think it kind of rose a little bit of emotion, and that's like, okay, wait, what else is being switched here? Mr. Bream, do I have that generally correct?
I specifically remember the plan coming forward with the parking on the street. I remember there being some concern about the plan being revised. I remember Mr. Fisher's comment that he was not aware that that plan was going to be submitted. I think that was a surprise to him that evening, and that plan was withdrawn. But as far as the actual specifics and the comments of the individual council people, I do not have specific recollection. I do know just that plan was submitted. There was concern about on-street parking and what that would look like in this gateway area. But as far as the specifics of who said what, I think it was withdrawn based on those concerns, and that's my recollection.
And by the way, I don't disagree with any of that. We're not saying we don't want to do it. We just wanted to bring to your attention our recollection of the reaction we got from planning and zoning. So if you, as council, tell us that you would prefer the on-street parking on Sunbury Meadows Drive, and I certainly understand and appreciate, as I mentioned earlier, the traffic calming aspects of that, we will proceed accordingly.
The difficulty, frankly, that we've been having with on-street parking by our similar units in town is that they tend to become populated by people that use them to park extra vehicles and so forth during snow events. And we have had some issues near those type of units across from GRE and so forth. So To the extent council is ready to provide answers to those tonight, feel free to do so. But David, I think this may be something that they need to take under advisement and hear more of the pros and cons from their administrative team and their engineer prior to giving you comments. I understand you'd like to know, prior to this final reading in a couple of weeks, but this is something that I'm not sure that council is fully informed on as far as the pros and cons of switching something to that effect, which I understand that's your concern. To the extent they want it switched and they're firm in that, you need to know. I don't know necessarily how much if a full exchange and dialogue about the pros and cons of it.
That's fine. That's fine. I guess what I'd ask is if you could have those conversations and have Mr. Hall report back to us in time for us to make those changes before the 30th, that would be great. I would also say to you that I think all of you that have been around for a while know Mr. Romanelli well enough to know that if this is a change that you feel strongly about and you'd like to see made at the time of final development plan, he will absolutely do that.
Thank you. Mr. Breen summed up what I was going to say. I think we'll look to Mr. Hall. I mean, I think this would be incorporated as part of the broader Sunbury Meadows Drive traffic calming speed analysis that just beginning to go underway. We expect there to be improvements made. As we're in this approval process, I just don't want to tie a conclusion that we haven't drawn yet to a potential approval.
I would agree. Just worst case, if the development text read that if the city so decides during final construction drawings to have on-street parking with bump out and landscaping, that is permitted through the development text and agreed to by the applicant. And then if we decide not to, that would give us more time. So worst case, if it is in the development text as a potential option, that may be what we recommend if we can't come to an agreement. So
that's fine. Wes, if you'll just let us know that in time for us to make that change, that takes care of that. What about the
Wes, and I just want to chime in there, Wes. I'm not prepared to go down that road of administrative approval can be done at any time in the future. I think we need to have a development plan that's approved, that has clear direction. This I see as a major issue. I think council needs to wrestle with it and decide it. But to the extent it's revised later, there's a process to do that. That's a modification of approved development plan, but that requires another set of approval. I guess I get a little concerned when we punt decisions or delay decisions for a future date on something that potentially could be a concern and is a concern to, I know, some people.
David, that's fine with us. As long as you give us direction of how you'd like to address this issue, we will absolutely go along and cooperate. So I will look for Mr. Hall to get back to us on that. We presented a variant plan tonight, turning the one building that Mr. Smith discussed. Is that a desire of council to do that? And in that same discussion, are we in agreement that there'll be a 4-foot tall mound, and what's the height of the fence?
I personally like to get a little bit of feedback from the resident, if that's possible.
We have one resident here that's the mound and we maybe have others. I apologize on common bent, but let's get our comments out first. And because there are a lot of houses that would be impacted by that. A 4-foot mound and an 8-foot fence, that is tall. That is extremely tall. And I understand. I think I heard Mr. Mead say, that's fine. That will be completely out of character for anything. I can't think of a situation where we have a 4-foot mound and 8-foot fence. The only time I've seen it, I think, is in Galena around their sewer plant. And that maybe isn't even 12-foot total. Is there another example that we can maybe draw from? This is a residential against residential neighborhood. This isn't two different countries. I understand there should be buffering but 12 feet seems excessive. That will tower over the houses.
If I understand correctly, the original proposal of a 3 or 4 foot mound and a 6 foot fence, was that there? How tall was the original fence before the 8 foot proposal?
It
6 foot.
6 foot? Okay, so
3 and 6, and then we most recently said 3 and 8, and now we're doing 4 and 8.
Yeah.
I mean, Wes put together a nice exhibit to show, okay, literally, if you're standing on the patios, if you're sitting in the living room, you aren't going to be able to see anybody. I mean, we're talking about looking at the roof line, and there's another visual in here that shows, you know, even once it's all built in, you're going to see maybe a cupola or something.
yeah, that was gonna be my point. So if the 3 and 6 suffices and solves the problem of someone either peering in or peering out into someone else's window, then I think that serves a purpose along with the trees and the different greenery that's gonna be there, but.
I think Wes was showing the exhibit of 3 and 8, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and I would comment on that 4 and 6 is pretty close to 3 and 8, so we're just talking a foot difference. And if you just project the middle, it's gonna be somewhere between, you know, a couple feet below the top eave height of the building or that roof line. So that 4 and 6, if Gary can get the mound up to 4 feet and work it within that setback area, with a 6 foot fence, that could be more of a vinyl maintenance free type product. That feels doable.
We can easily get to the 4, and let's not forget too, moving that building back also changed your sightline picture.
Correct, right, to 60 feet.
So it has kind of adjusted that, it's pulled the building back in that while the sightline kind of continues up. The only other thing I wanted to throw out, because there was some discussion on this earlier, and there was some method to the madness. Again, David mentioned the compactor, and I'm not opposing anything either way, whatever the council decides, you know, ultimately, but there's a reason that we put the compactor over here. Compactors make noise, and, you know, at some point in time, you know, sometimes before they're empty, they smell. And so that was the reason why we didn't have it down at this end of the property near the neighbors on Common Bend. We moved it over here because there's nobody directly on the opposite side of that compactor. The way that normally works in an apartment complex, and this is true of any apartment developer that I've worked in, normally they have one compactor location. And what most people do when they take out their trash, because most of them have gone to compactors these days, they don't have dumpsters littered around the complex. It's just a lot cleaner to do a compactor. What most folks do when they're taking out their trash is they take their trash out in the morning, they put it in the trunk of their car. They walk over to the compactor, they throw it in, and they go to work. So they're not walking somewhere with their trash. Normally, they just take it with them as a matter of habit and convenience. And so that's how they normally work. All that being said, if the council feels strongly again that there ought to be a compactor or a dumpster or something on that side of the, you know, we're willing to entertain that. But I just wanted to kind of go over the logic of why we located a compactor over in that corner.
Hey, Gary, I agree with that, with those comments, and my experience is the same as yours in this kind of development in terms of what people do with their trash. My question is, if council feels strongly about having the compactor on the west side, could we move it further to the north to get it away from the neighbors?
Well, I think either way we do it, we're still going to end up, you know, either here or here, because that's our opportunity to kind of come straight in. So if we shifted this building down a little bit, we could probably put the compactor right there and move it further away, but.
All right. So we'd look to council for some comment on what they'd like to see there, or from Mr. Hall in terms of after this explanation by Gary Smith, in terms of, is there a need for a second compactor on the west side of the development?
I would like to see a second compactor for the fact of the traffic going across Sunbury Meadows. I lived in apartments myself with compactors, and I know exactly how it works. And you either throw them in the car, you drive over in the morning time when you're leaving for work or when you're coming back, or you walk to the compactor. The thing that strikes me on this is the amount of more of the residents are on that side. You know, so if we're only gonna have one, you would think logic would tell you to put it where most people are. The furthest north away from the houses, I think would be best, because you're right, they can get an odor. Oftentimes they can break down and malfunction, so I think as far away from the single family as possible would be ideal, and probably in the place where there's the most residents would make the most sense.
Gary, any further thoughts on that?
No, you know, I think, you know, we've been pretty clear that, we're gonna, I think, see to the council's wishes here. So if everybody feels like that's the right thing to do, then, that's what we'll do.
Okay, and then back to the issue of the new drawing that's been presented tonight, the new plan with turning the one building and moving it further north so they have a 60-foot setback. Is that something that council likes and would like to see us proceed on that basis?
I think the orientation change makes sense. It pushes the building further north, and there are not balconies on the ends, right?
Yeah. There are balconies on the end.
Okay. Okay, so we will proceed accordingly. Mr. Hall, if you can get back to us before long on the issue on the on-street parking on Sunbury Meadows Drive, that would be great, and we'll get a new package ready for council in anticipation of the November 30th third reading on this, and from a developer's perspective, hopeful passage. I do want to point out to all of council, as well as any residents that may be there tonight, that there is an open invitation by Mr. Romanelli and Mr. Olin, who's there with us tonight, that if anyone would like to go down and visit the project on North Straight Street in Westerville, across from the Giant Eagle, to understand the kind of project that this will be, that Mr. Romanelli welcomes that, and they're more than happy to accommodate folks who would like to come down and take a look at that if we just have notice ahead of time that they're coming. So I want to make that, continue that open invitation to both council and interested residents. So with that, Mayor and council, we thank you for your time tonight and for the input on this second reading. Happy to answer further questions you may have.
Did we agree on 2 compactors?
Yes.
Okay. That went around and around and around. I just want to make
So
sure.
we got
Something.
we got one thing. I don't think anybody else made it, but nobody else.
No, but I meant in the conversation here. I know it's not been agreed to by the whole gang here yet. But
It sounds fair and reasonable to me based on the traffic
Yeah,
issue, but
I think so
I
too.
think it needs to be as far north as possible due to the
Much
noise.
traffic is going to be on that street. We don't need to have people carrying their trash all the way over there. That's my opinion, but yeah,
Sounds like we have a consensus.
yes, I think so too.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time tonight. We look forward to being with you again on the 30th for a third reading on this matter. And we'll look forward to hearing from you, Mr. Hall.
I think there's going to be more discussion about the mounding and the fence. I would encourage everyone, if you want to connect with Mr. I think it's Mr. Mead, is that right? Larry Mead?
Yes.
After the
Yeah.
meeting,
Yeah.
I think he was the one who voiced the most concern, and
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I'm more concerned about what the residents there want to see. I'm not really concerned about what we see necessarily. It's not a highly visible area. If you're driving by, maybe you look over at the mound, maybe you don't. So I'm not too concerned about that. I just want to appease their concern with regard to what they want to see. It's their backyard. That's all.
I'm sure Mr. Smith can have some further discussions with neighbors in that regard.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
any other further comment from council? All right. We're on to second reading ordinance number 2023.01, an ordinance to approve expenses and other expenditures of the city of Sunbury, Delaware County, state of Ohio during the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2023 and December 31st, 2023. It's the second reading. On the first readings, ordinance number 2022.45, an ordinance authorizing execution of a development agreement between Dovefield Partners LLC and 3Bs and K Holdings LLC and the city of Sunbury and declaring an emergency. I don't believe we're looking for an emergency passage of this, Mr. Breen, right?
We
No,
are. Aren't we, David? I thought we'd agreed to emergency on this.
Yes, I think on this one, we were. This is, unlike some other developments that we've approved, we went ahead and this has full zoning approval. They're waiting to move forward. They have contractual commitments that require them to have their development agreements finalized. We did a lot of work prior to the zoning being approved on this, but there were some tricky little issues. We're out in the west interchange area, I would like to refer to it, where we do have Delaware County involved. They have a sewer service that they are providing, so there were some issues there. We needed to work out some final issues regarding our NCA and our NCA charges. Those have been done, worked out, approved by NCA council as well as council for the developer. So there's been some time lapse. They've been sitting on zoning approval on this for a while. Some projects and developers, we try to get everything done prior to the zoning approval. This one we were not able to do that, so it has caused somewhat of a delay. But that is why the emergency language is here. It's received full approval by myself, bond counsel as well, and staff. I believe that we are requesting that be approved tonight if council so inclined.
And I would add, as representative to the developer, we would like the three readings suspended as well as the emergency tonight, so this can move forward. I think Mr. Bream has done an excellent job of explaining the background here. This has gone on for a while. There's been a lot of negotiation, and that's where we've ended up. And I think this is ready to go.
Motion to suspend the rules.
Got a motion by Mr. Martin,
Second.
by Mr. Neff. Discussion. Roll call.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Ghost,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Motion on the emergency.
A motion by Mr. Martin,
Second.
by Mr. Neff. Discussion. Roll call.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Ghost,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
Motion on ordinance number 2022.45.
Motion by Councilman Martin on the ordinance. Second by Mr. Neff. Discussion. Roll call.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Ghost,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Yes.
All right, we are on to ordinance number 2022.46, an ordinance authorizing the acceptance sealed bids for salvage and dispose of unneeded property at 63 South Columbus Street and 75 South Columbus Street, declaring an emergency.
Mr. Mayor, there are a few architectural items in that building, and there is some nice limestone slabs and some rock that has some value on the outside. I would ask that you suspend the rules and declare an emergency. I've got till May 1st to get the buildings down and the area seeded, and unfortunately, I
Every day.
I need to get one thing done before I can get down to knocking the buildings down, and that's getting some bids in for someone if they want to salvage those materials.
Okay.
This is the English major in me talking.
Okay,
Can we add the word of between acceptance and sealed in that first line? Acceptance of sealed bids?
yes, I can see that.
All right. I'll suspend the rules. I'll make a motion to suspend the rules.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Ghost. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Ghost,
Yes.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper.
Let the record reflect she stepped out for a minute. All right, motion on the emergency,
I'll second.
second by Tim Goes. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Ghost,
Yes.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper has stepped out.
All right, we're on the ordinance number 2022.
We're on the ordinance.
Pushing on.
Pardon me, sir.
Well, we want to do it right.
I said one number wrong. Ordinance number 2022.46. Your mayor made the motion.
I'll second.
Second by President of Council Tim Goes. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Ghost,
Yes.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
and Cindy Cooper has stepped out.
Right. Motion passes. Thank you, Dave. We're on to ordinance number 2022.47, an ordinance accepting a proposal from MS Consultants, Inc. for comprehensive design services for the City of Sunbury Municipal Facilities Project and declaring an emergency. We discussed this in quite a bit of detail in the finance meeting. It's a project we need to move forward with. And this is for design services to renovate the municipal building, future police station, design the maintenance building on Sedgwick.
Motion to suspend the rules.
Got a motion to suspend the rules by Mr. Capel,
Second.
second by Mr. Grumney. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Gross,
Yes.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Motion on the emergency.
Got a motion on the emergency, Mr. Capel,
Second.
second by Mr. Grumney. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Gross,
Yes.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper, yes, Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Motion on ordinance 2022.47.
Mr. Capel made a motion on 2022.47,
Second.
second by Mr. Grumney. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Gross,
Yes.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper, yes, Mr. Martin,
Yes.
All right, we're on new and unfinished business. We've got a few new items that we need to address, then we'll go around the horn. Motion to vote on invitation to bid for demolition of 63 South Columbus Street. I think we already did that, or do we need to do something different?
One was for salvage. That was the one that you just passed. This would be authorizing me to be able to issue the bid for demolition. Those bids will come back to you for approval, but it allows me to continue to move that process up the hill.
I'll make the motion to go out the bid,
I'll second.
to get bids, excuse me, second by Mr. Goes. Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Gross,
Yes.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper, yes, Mr. Martin.
Yes.
We've got purchase order number 36138, Squire Patton Boggs Legal Services, 23,598.47.
I'll make a motion.
A motion by Councilman Martin. Second by Mr. Neff. Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Gross,
Yes.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper, yes, Mr. Martin,
Yes.
All right, we're on to the employee health insurance program for 2023. I just want to say, I was very happy with the bids that came back. This is a win-win-win for our people. We set out, we got a new broker over the past year, who went and fought for us. At a minimum, this is going to give virtually every single employee in the city of Sunbury a $4,000 pay increase through premium and reduced deductible, great coverage, and it's going to save taxpayers $180,000 a year. Plus, we're funding HSAs for our employees. I mean, this is the absolute best thing for our people, and I'm so happy that we're getting ready to move forward with approval. I believe everybody's seen the proposal at this point, and
Police department is on board, right?
They're very much on board. They're very thankful. Are you guys on board? Okay, good deal. Dana, are you on board?
Yeah.
All right, good deal. It's great news, guys. I'll make a motion to approve the benefits pending legal review. We need to sign this by November 30th. I think Mr. Green will have time to review that. We're gonna try to set a deadline for Thanksgiving. The first football game for Mr. Breen to review.
I'll second.
Second by Councilwoman Cooper. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Goss,
Yes.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Great. That is excellent. It's huge. It's huge.
Excellent. Agreed.
First Amendment to Service Agreement, Local Waste Services. It's on page 63. So if you go backwards from the front page of the agenda, you'll get there quicker. Looking for an approval on this right now, right? All right. Would anybody like to make that motion? This has been discussed in several different formats.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Councilman Grumney,
Second.
second by Councilman Capel. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Goss,
Yes.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mr. Neff,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper,
Yes.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Motion. All right, we do have a meeting on November 30th, 2022. We will have one the following week after that. That's December 7th. And then December gets pretty wild. We do want to go around the horn on new and unfinished business. I'd like to start with Mr. Neff.
Nothing to report.
Okay, I'm good.
Just wanted to mention, if you're feeling charitable this time of year, the community library is currently having a mitten drive. And there's gonna be a soft drive at the Christmas on the Square.
That's awesome. All right,
Nothing here.
okay.
Report.
Nothing other than tomorrow night is the fire board meeting. We'll be attending that.
Oh, good deal.
Mhm.
Excellent. I just wanted to give a couple updates. I've done some public speaking, some are different civic organizations, and I got to meet with the Cub Scouts on Monday night. That was pretty cool. The toughest question, the one I couldn't answer, is if spirited 10-year-old said, if I catch a big cat in the reservoirs, catfish, do I have to catch and release? So I couldn't answer that. So I got the answer from Steve. I got back to that young man. They have a lot of good questions.
Was it catch and release?
Was that?
What was the answer?
It is catch and release. Okay, I got the answer is generally catch and release.
Yeah, we encourage catch and release, but there's probably, when the trout are in there, the trout aren't gonna last forever, so.
Right. So, I mean, you're talking to 10-year-olds, so the number one question is, when are we getting Chick-fil-A? You know,
Hear that one a lot. Yeah.
yeah, when are we getting a rec center?
Hear that one a lot, really a lot.
Yeah, how
working
much
on
money do I make? They were disappointed when. Like, wait, what? They said, one kid said he thought it was $1 million a day. No. And then I got to meet with the Rotary group, and I want to thank Councilman Martin, who's a Rotary member, also Councilwoman Cooper. Mr. Gross is on the Westerville Rotary. That's a great group of individuals. They do a lot of service projects. That group was very receptive because I was able to do a deep dive into finances and the investment side of, our role, and that, you can pad a balance sheet or a fund by not replacing things that need replaced, like roads, sewer, stuff like that. We're in an investment mode right now, and I talked a lot in detail about that. And the number one investment we're putting financial capital into is our people and our facilities for our people, because we are growing. And I think it's important to tell that story. There's not enough discussion around what we're doing for the long-term sustainability, so we can attract great talent, keep great people. And make Sunbury a great place to live into the future. That said, that's all I have.
Motion to adjourn.
A motion by Mr. Martin.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Can I just say two things before you guys adjourn?
Sure, do you want to come up?
Well, I don't really need to. This Saturday, we're having the Cranberry Cruiser for, that's gonna be at Kroger
Okay.
for the, Prince Share. It's gonna be from 10 to 1, so we're hoping to get a big participation with that and build a couple cruisers. And second, I just want to publicly thank all of you for what you did on the insurance. It was amazing. I mean, for years of work, to get the news we got today, I mean, I thank everyone.
It's our pleasure.
Thanks, Chief.
Steve?
I just wanted to congratulate and compliment Amber on a 4-hour grind through clerking, and we had a lot of projection going on, and I think she did a great job for getting in that driver's seat.
Good job, Amber. Yeah, this was a long night. You don't even look tired. Thank you so much. All right,
we have to vote on the motion.
I think we're ready for a roll call. Thanks.
We're ready for a roll call?
I believe so. Did we get a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Neff.
Mr. Capel?
Yes.
Mr. Ghost?
Yes.
Mayor St. John?
Yes.
Mr. Neff?
Yes.
Mr. Grumney?
Yes.
Mrs. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
We are adjourned at 9:15.
Thank you, Mr. Breen. Have a safe trip.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. See you soon.